What's up, everybody? I'm good. How are you doing? Yeah, how's everyone in the chats? What's up? What's up? Muted? Oh, I think that is my fault. Aw, I was watching.
Yeah.
Okay, now you can hear Marone. Let's
Can you
let's
guys hear
redo
me?
that
Hello?
intro.
Hello?
Hello, everyone. What is up?
What's up, everybody? How we all doing? Kaisa, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. My output was on a different thing because my sister was doing a presentation on deep fakes
That's
and how to
right.
spot them on the internet. So once
Yeah.
that VOD comes out, I want to share that with everyone because that's good stuff to know how to spot a deep fake.
Yeah, for real. Because those are really
Oh, now I
scary
think
sometimes.
you're muted on your side. Nope, just kidding. Wow, lots of technical difficulties today. Feels like a Monday.
It's okay. It happens.
It's all right. It happens.
It's on our shoulders. We got it.
We can do this.
So wait, am I heard? Am I being heard now?
Yes,
Am I
you're
good?
being heard.
Okay, cool.
Yes, all
Great.
good stuff.
Oh,
Should we
man.
get right into it?
Yeah, because this first story is going to be a little bit of one of those realizations of what the reality is of loot boxes, as a report came out of the BBC for an individual who says they blew their entire university savings on FIFA.
Which is terrible to hear. I am disappointed that this happened, but honestly not surprised. So, like many teenagers, Jonathan Pennickett enjoyed buying random player packs to build up his team on the FIFA football game, or soccer for those of you who say soccer. But when his mom was diagnosed with cancer, his spending on these packs or loot boxes became, as he sees it, an addiction he could not control.
The House of Lords Gambling Committee is calling for loot boxes, which are not currently considered to be gambling, to be regulated urgently. Jonathan says, I have loved video games since I was a child. I remember waking up early on weekends and heading straight downstairs to play FIFA 05 with the sound off so I wouldn't wake my parents.
He goes on to say that now 21, I'm fortunate to have made some of my closest friends online, and I think video games can be great for any child. I stress this before saying that I feel compelled to tell my story of how loot box gambling led to one of the worst experiences of my life.
So we're about to just recount his story and his experience, and take this all in. As Jonathan says, in 2009, EA Sports launched the Ultimate Team game mode in their FIFA series. It's like a huge online football trading card game, and users can then add these players to their teams. Better players give you an advantage, and there is a virtual currency and market where these cards are traded, and you can buy packs containing a random selection of cards.
So he continues, quote, I distinctly remember back in 2012 when I first asked my parents if I could use my money to buy packs, and my frustration when my dad said the packs were gambling before finally agreeing.
Jonathan says that the idea that it was gambling seemed ridiculous to me at the time. I understood the chances of packing my favorite players were low. I spent the money, opened my packs, got a lucky couple items, and tried to be positive despite being left feeling slightly underwhelmed. And if I could just spend another 15 euros.
4 years followed as spending more and more money on player packs, each time seeking that buzz that would only occasionally come. As time went on, he was becoming increasingly secretive about it. He said that he would buy a voucher from a high street shop and hide it in his room so his parents wouldn't find out how much he was spending.
And at the time, he had nothing else that he would rather spend his money on. He thought each time that this would be the one where he got lucky. It was when he was 17, he got his first debit card, and then suddenly the decision to spend money on the game became instant. It was just a click of the button with no need to buy vouchers and worry that his parents would find them.
He said 2017 was the year that changed everything in his life. He was completing his last year of A-levels with vague plans to go to university. In September, his mom was diagnosed with cancer.
And that's when he said everything became about waiting until it would just all be a memory, waiting until the day that his mom's treatment would be over and he'd have to finish his exams and they could just appreciate a normal life again.
He said that he searched for any way to cope, and the buzz of opening packs offered him an escape.
And that's when the money ran out. And he was saying that any rational sense of moderation and the value of money that his parents and grandparents had saved for his future began to subside. He said he felt the need, like he needed the money now and to cope, and that in years to come, his future self would somehow understand.
He said he was spending 30 pounds at a time, then 40, then 50. By the time his card began to block his transactions, he was throwing 80 pounds into the game 4 or 5 times a night.
Yeah, sorry, I said euro earlier. I have a European wife, so I apologize. And then Jonathan went on to say this a few weeks before his exams, after days of watching people open packs on YouTube, which, for those of you know, there are a lot of channels that are these individuals opening these loot boxes and these packs, and they get attention due to this. Mm-hmm. His parents thought that he was upstairs revising, and then the moment came when the money ran out.
He said money that his parents and grandparents had worked for, that had been given to him as savings for his future. He had blown almost 3,000 pounds. And as you said, with a lot of these videos that come out, there's a lot of YouTube videos that show people getting great stuff in their packs. Like, so they give this hope that you can get like really good stuff in these loot boxes. Coop says, "Oh no, not Harry. That kid is wild." Is this the person on the screen? It's just so much hype, so much excitement. They only show when they get really good items as well. So, you know, a lot of people are going to believe that they have a chance to get those items as well. And when they don't, it's just, hey, let's try again until, you know, 3,000 pounds later and they don't have any money.
Yeah. And he said, looking back on what happened, one of the things that stuck out to him the most was how he was going on spending without any of his family knowing.
He said, "We had family rules with restrictions on gaming time, so there was no lack of parental regulation, and I frequently told my concerned parents that I was not addicted to video games themselves."
Jonathan says, "I stand by that now, but I was addicted to the buzz of the chance when I bought packs. You know, I now agree that with what my dad said that angered me back in 2012, video game packs and loot boxes are a form of gambling."
Quote, "With the House of Lords Gambling Committee calling for randomized reward purchases like these to be urgently regulated under gambling laws, I want to do what I can to educate and protect other people from going through an experience like mine."
And he finished his interview by saying, "I owe it to my teenage self and the others who regret spending money on loot boxes to do what I can to end what is utter exploitation."
So EA's response to this is the makers of FIFA, EA Sports, deny any aspect of FIFA constitutes gambling and agree with the assessment made by the Gambling Commission that loot boxes are not gambling.
They say that the FIFA Ultimate Team can be played without spending any money and the purchases are entirely optional.
Then they go on to say the well-being of players is paramount, and all their games, including FIFA, have the ability to use parental controls provided by gaming platforms to cap or prohibit spending.
And the source of this report was from the BBC, and they actually reached out for comment, but they have not heard anything back, which I am not surprised by.
I am not surprised by either. I think if they were to respond, it would kind of be the same thing of like, oh, well, this is up to the players. This isn't gambling. Like, this is totally fine in practice. And it's just this is so predatory to me. Saying that there are parental controls, like you could even see by this person's story, they're saying that their parents, you know, monitor their gaming time, and even then they would like secretly hide their cards or the money they spent and lie, and you know, find any way really it seems to spend money on these loot boxes. And you can see how serious an issue it is that if someone's spending, you know, their life savings on this game, that's not really being regulated.
Yeah, I gotta side too with the comments there. I'm not a huge fan of Electronic Arts. I worked for them in the past about 6 months, and I will say my work experience allows me this very anecdotal opinion. But the comment of what Philip is saying, and even Triceps there with the fact that you know the first step into a casino is optional as well. It's just such a dismissive, downplay response to not acknowledge the reality of what loot boxes are. And that just is still this thing for me that I'm like, are they just going to be the type that just denies that it's gambling as long as possible until an actual regulation goes into effect? And then they're like, okay, we'll stop.
Right. I wonder, you know, what it's going to take for these things to, not be in gaming anymore, not be in games. As you said, technically the first step into a casino is optional too, but also in a casino, you're carded, you're ID'd. There's a lot of security everywhere. You have to like physically go there in the first place. Versus with these video games, you're in the comfort of your own home. You could just log on, just enter your credit card, and no one is really like monitoring you or keeping eyes on you. So there is, a greater barrier to entry with, in-person gambling. And I've also heard like ads on the radio of like, oh, if you think you have a gambling problem, like you can call this number. Like there are organizations that, try to help with that.
Yeah.
But for video games, I haven't really seen anything anywhere of like, think you might have a gambling problem in video games, call this number. I've never seen like any resources for people to actually go to.
Yeah, I remember a story playing Rocket League, because Rocket League had loot crates, and these things were under massive controversy, and they went away to have blueprints. So loot crates are no longer a thing, and people loved the loot crates because it was that. There's a guy on YouTube, John Sandman, who is popular literally because this is all he would do. He would just open up these loot boxes, and people would watch him, and they would, feed his channel for that. I remember playing with a kid who had informed us that he wasn't on for a couple of months because the teammate of mine was like, "Where have you been?" And he said, my parents grounded me because I maxed out my dad's credit card by buying keys and loot crates." And the kid was like 13 years old because the parent had his financial information attached to the account. He just kept doing it. He was like, "Oh, I didn't know there was anything wrong. I just kept going until it stopped." And I was like, this is like why
this is the problem.
It has to stop. Yes.
Right. That is why, it has to be addressed. And I remember in like an intro site course that I took, they talked about how the further you remove an item from actual money, the easier it is to kind of spend, or the less you think about it as real money. So like I even think of that when it's like in Fortnite, you don't spend money, you buy V-Bucks and spend the V-Bucks. Right. Yes. Or with some of these websites, it's like you buy like Bigo Live, which is like a live stream app, is like you buy a chicken dinner and then the streamer gets the chicken dinner, and it's like it's not real money anymore. It's just some form so far from money that you don't see it that way anymore. So when even the same concept I think applies to like debit cards, like that's already a lot of people don't see it as real money, and then when you spend it in these games, whatever the points or coins or are called, that's another level of making it easier for you to spend and not realize what exactly you're doing.
Yeah, and that's just it too, is like it's if it was something you could regulate for someone over the age of 18 or 21, whatever you deemed was the legal age to be allowed to participate in gambling based on your country and your laws, this would be something where I'd be like, cool, you have to restrict that. You know what I mean? You have to make sure that this person is identifying themselves as an individual that can be doing this legally. But I think what this is going to take, and we're hearing some politicians talk about it, and you're hearing some other countries talk about it, is like, this is going to take a massive movement from our judicial systems to address this gray area right now within video games and just call it for what it is. This is gambling. I mean, there's no way to look at it in anyone who tries to describe it otherwise, which is what I find EA's response disgusting, is it's like, okay, that, and you're trying to keep it going because you're profiting off of it, off of an addiction that you're actually the ones creating.
Right. I think you made a good point about how there's no way for, to enforce like the legality of it. Like, for example, if you go to like a website for alcohol, they have you enter in your age because you should be only 21 to go in, but anyone could technically just like put in whatever they want, like, which is illegal, but it's very easy to do and there's no real way to enforce. And as you said, like, no one's really checking your ID. I could also see a big potential for like data leaks if you have to like send in your driver's license to some of these websites. Like, why would I trust EA with my personal information and like identifying information? And I think it should be regulated. Maybe there's like a third party that handles that, that's more secure, or some way to actually enforce these rules versus letting it really be a free-for-all. I think a lot of laws haven't updated to account for what's happening online or in games, and the consumers and people are being hurt at the end of the day.
Yeah, and this is why we need more individuals like this to speak out. If you yourself have an experience like this, or you know someone like this, get them to speak out and post about it and share it. Because I think the more that we generate this conversation, the more our local and officials, and as much as we are dealing with COVID and a pandemic right now, the worst thing would be is while individuals are stuck home and don't have anything to do, they start to grow these addictions like gambling, a gambling addiction, which can be very, very dangerous and damaging to the people, not just the individual, but those who surround that individual and family and by proxy. So, this is just something that I want to see continue to talk about. And I'm excited that a source like the BBC, as a huge media entity, is now talking about what the fallout is from something like this when it's not being handled correctly.
Me too. I'm glad it's getting a lot more attention, and especially at this point in time when people are spending more money in video games. I briefly saw an article that was talking about how inflation in UK is being driven partially by, all the consumer spending on video games, and hopefully that spending is going into like good things and not gambling and not people like spending their money in FIFA. I'd like to see even more, articles or literature about this to really, show that it's a real problem. And especially with everything that's come out in gaming, where a lot of things in gaming are predatory, like this should be something that gets addressed because gaming appeals to a lot of kids, a lot of vulnerable people. And there is a responsibility there that, individuals aren't taken advantage of.
Yep. So let's see what happens in the future with loot boxes. But for now, just educate those around you who may not understand the actual effect of loot boxes and to the extent that they can go. If you know someone that's going through that, seek some help or talk to someone about it, because it can become a real issue, and nobody should be suffering that. Nobody should be suffering that.
Not at all. So to pivot to our next topic, we have an in-depth look at Xbox Velocity architecture and a closer look at the next-gen tech driving gaming innovation forward on the Xbox Series X.
So as some of you probably know, we've done a lot of talking about the PlayStation 5 and recognizing how much we love the PlayStation 5 and are excited about it. And then some are really big fans of Xbox and are kind of like, wait, when are you guys going to do some Xbox talk? So we actually found a wonderful, deep, in-depth conversation about what Microsoft is saying is their gaming innovation. So when Microsoft set out to design the Xbox Series X, they aspired to build their most powerful console ever, powered by next generation innovation and delivering consistent, sustained performance never before seen in a console with no compromises. And in order to achieve this goal, Microsoft knew that they needed to analyze each component of the system to push beyond the limitations in a traditional console performance and design.
It was critical in the design of the Xbox Series X to ensure they had a superior balance of power, speed, and performance, while ensuring no component would constrain the creative ambition of the world's best creators, empowering them to deliver truly transformative next-gen gaming experiences not possible in prior console generations.
So at the heart of the Xbox Series X is their custom processor leveraging the latest RDNA2 and Zen 2 architectures from the partners at AMD to deliver a best-in-class next-gen processor delivering more than 12 teraflops or T-flops of GPU power and more than 4 times the CPU processing power of the Xbox One X. The Xbox Series X includes the highest memory bandwidth of any next-generation console with 16 gigs of GDDR6 memory, including 10 gigs of GPU-optimized memory at 560 gigs a second to keep the processor fed with no bottlenecks.
As they analyzed the storage subsystem, it became clear that they had reached the upper limits of traditional hard drive technology, and to deliver on design aspirations, they would need to radically rethink and revolutionize their approach with the Xbox Series X.
And this is when they focused on empowering the next generation game design and creative vision.
So, modern games require a significant amount of data to create the realistic worlds and universes that gamers experience. To enable the processor to work at its optimum performance, all of this data must be loaded from storage into memory. The explosion of massive dynamic open world environments and living, persistent worlds with increased density and variety has only increased the amount of data required.
So from environmental mesh data, high polygon character models, high resolution textures, animation data, audio and video source files, and more all combined together to deliver the most immersive gameplay environment for the player.
Despite the ability for modern game engines and middleware to stream game assets into memory off of local storage, level designers are still often required to create narrow pathways, hallways, or elevators to work around the limitations of traditional hard drive and I/O pipeline. So whenever you kind of go into an elevator or a tight hallway, oftentimes that's really just something to mask the loading of the next scene. And, as these games get more complex, they didn't want to limit developers in just having to do hallways all the time before you really show anything in the next part of the game.
Yeah, so these in-game elements are often used, like Kaisa was saying, to mask the need to unload the prior zone's assets from memory while beginning to load the new assets for the next space. Now, as Microsoft discussed developers' aspirations for their next-generation titles and the limitations of current-generation technology, this challenge would continue to increase exponentially and further constrain the ambition for truly transformative games. This feedback influenced the design and the development of the Xbox Velocity architecture.
So, introducing the Xbox Velocity architecture, there was a trailer that was put out, as you can see on the screen, which just kind of shows a lot of the games that were already revealed. So we'll be talking more about, all the ways that the Xbox Velocity architecture actually works. As you can see, this is kind of similar to, I feel like PlayStation had similar aesthetics with how it was like you're in like a vortex or a hyper, a hyper jump or whatever, and showing, models of the chips and of the designs. So we'll get into what, those actually mean.
Yeah, so the Xbox Velocity architecture was designed as the ultimate solution for game asset streaming in the next generation. This radical reinvention of the traditional I/O subsystems, I/O meaning the input-output, it directly influenced all aspects of the Xbox Series X's design.
If their custom design processor is at the heart of the Xbox Series X, the Xbox Velocity architecture is the soul. Through a deep integration of hardware and software innovation, the Xbox Velocity architecture will power next-gen gaming experiences unlike anything you've ever seen before.
And so the Xbox Velocity architecture is comprised of four major components. One that we said before, which is the custom NVMe SSD, hardware accelerated decompression blocks, a brand new direct storage API layer, and sampler feedback streaming known as SFS. So we're just going to go ahead and take a moment to dive into each component.
And we'll start with the custom NVMe SSD. The foundation of the Xbox Velocity architecture is their custom 1 terabyte NVMe SSD, delivering 2.4 gigabytes per second of raw I/O throughput, more than 40 times the throughput of the Xbox One. Traditional SSDs used in PCs often reduce performance as thermals increase or while performing drive maintenance. The custom NVMe SSD in Xbox Series X is designed for consistent, sustained performance as opposed to peak performance. And I guess just a quick note on SSDs for those who aren't into a lot of hardware. The older storage model is, your normal hard drive disk, which you hear whir and spin as you load up assets. Meanwhile, yes, and so if you turn on your PC, usually it's that hard drive, revving up, and it might take maybe like 30 seconds to start your PC. But if you have an SSD, and you're working off of that, your computer could start in 2 seconds to fully load up everything.
Yep, that is true. Thank you so much for the donation, Kai Almighty. We really appreciate it. Calf, what is going on? Welcome.
What's up?
So more on the custom NVMe SSD. So they say that developers have a guaranteed level of an I/O performance at all times, that they can reliable design and optimize their games, removing the barriers and constraints that they have to work around today. This is the same level of consistent, sustained performance, also applying to the new Seagate expandable storage card that they will be offering, ensuring that you have the exact same gameplay experience regardless of where the game resides.
And so next we'll get into the hardware accelerated decompression. Game packages and assets are compressed to minimize download times and the amount of storage required for each individual game. With hardware accelerated support for both the industry standard LZ decompressor as well as a brand new proprietary algorithm specifically designed for texture data named BCPack. Xbox Series X provides the best of both worlds for developers to achieve massive savings with no loss in quality or performance.
So, as texture data comprises a significant portion of the total overall size of a game, having a purpose built algorithm optimized for texture data in addition to the general purpose LZ decompressor both can be used in parallel to actually reduce the overall size of a game package. So, assuming that a 2:1 compression ratio, Xbox Series X delivers an effective 4.8 gigs a second in input output performance to the title. That's approximately 100 times the input-output performance in current gen consoles. And to deliver similar levels of decompression performance in software would actually require more than a 4 Zen 2 CPU core.
There's also the new Direct Storage API. Standard file I/O APIs were developed more than 30 years ago and are virtually unchanged, while storage technology has made significant advances in the past 30 years. As Microsoft analyzed game data access patterns as well as the latest hardware advancements with SSD technology, they knew they needed to advance the state of the art to put more control into the hands of developers.
So they added a brand new direct storage API to the DirectX family, providing developers with fine-grained control of their I/O operations, empowering them to establish multiple I/O queues, prioritization, and minimization of I/O latency. These direct low-level access APIs have ensured developers will actually be able to take full advantage of the raw I/O performance afforded by the hardware, resulting in virtually eliminating load times or fast travel systems that are just that. They're actually fast.
And so finally, we'll get into the sampler feedback streaming, or SFS. So sampler feedback streaming is a brand new innovation built on top of all of the other advancements of the Xbox Velocity architecture. Game textures are optimized at differing levels of detail and resolution, called MIP maps, and can be used during rendering based on how close or far away an object is from the player. As an object moves closer to the player, the resolution of the texture must increase to provide the crisp detail and visuals that gamers expect.
So a MIP map, if you think about it visually, it kind of looks like a Minecraft map. It's a low-res version of wherever you are. And if you look at these images, it's like, oh, that kind of looks like Minecraft. So when a game has this information, they just downscale all of this so that it's sitting at a very small space. And then once the player gets over there, it then comes to life for you to see it. Now, the larger MIP maps do require a significant amount of memory compared to the lower resolution MIPs that can be used if an object is further away in that scene. Today, developers must load an entire MIP level in memory, even in cases where they may only sample a very small portion of the overall texture.
Through specialized hardware added to the Xbox One X, they were able to analyze texture memory usage by the GPU and discovered that the GPU often accesses less than 1/3 of the texture data required to be loaded in memory. A single scene often includes thousands of different textures, resulting in a significant loss in effective memory and I/O bandwidth utilization due to inefficient usage.
So with this insight, Microsoft was able to create and add new capabilities to the Xbox Series X GPU, which enables it to only load sub-portions of a MIP level into memory on demand just in time for when the GPU requires the data. And this innovation has actually resulted in approximately 2.5 times the effective input-output throughput and memory usage above and beyond the raw hardware capabilities on average, thus meaning that the SFS provides an effective multiplier on available system memory and I/O bandwidth. And this is resulting in significantly more memory and I/O throughput available to make your game richer and more immersive.
Through the massive increase in I/O throughput, hardware-accelerated decompression, direct storage, and the significant increases in efficiency provided by sampler feedback streaming, the Xbox Velocity architecture enables the Xbox Series X to deliver effective performance well beyond the raw hardware specs, providing direct, instant, low-level access to more than 100 gigabytes of game data stored on the SSD just in time for when the game requires it. These innovations will unlock new gameplay experiences and a level of depth and immersion unlike anything you have previously experienced in gaming. And I just want to pause, before we reflect on everything that we've discussed to say that this is, the next gen is really next level because they've seen a lot of inefficiencies that have gone largely unaddressed for a long time now and actually made it so these consoles work better and actually take more advantage of the hardware they have versus just, putting in more cores or fancier hardware and just having those numbers speak for themselves, are saying, hey, we actually need to use this hardware most effectively, for this to be a good product.
And that's just it. It's we're all sitting in this time period right now of just kind of being like, I hear next gen. How many times have you heard the term next gen, and what is it really meant for us in understanding? And it's like, I think this is kind of one of those moments where you recognize how big next gen is, because this is just an exponential jump that we haven't really seen before, except, and we've used this reference often, of Phil Spencer saying the jump to next gen now is like the jump in graphics from 2D to 3D. And that was just a moment, I think, for all gamers. We didn't really understand what that was until we actually started to see 3D games. And that even blew us away. But if we go back in time and look at 3D games, we're like, wow, this doesn't look that great. This is horrible. But when it first was brought to us, our minds were blown.
Exactly. So we're looking at, what this all means for us as gamers, and as the industry's most creative developers and middleware companies have begun to explore these new capabilities, Microsoft expects significant innovation throughout the next generation, as this revolutionary new architecture enables entirely new scenarios never before considered possible in gaming.
And the Xbox Velocity architecture provides a new level of performance and capabilities well beyond the raw specifications of the hardware itself. The Xbox Velocity architecture fundamentally rethinks how a developer can take advantage of the hardware provided by the Xbox Series X, from entirely new rendering techniques to the virtually elimination of load times to larger, more dynamic living worlds where, as a gamer, you can actually get to choose how you truly want to explore. And Xbox and Microsoft cannot be more excited by the early results that they're seeing.
In addition, the Xbox Velocity architecture has opened even more opportunities and enabled new innovations at the platform level, such as Quick Resume, which enables you to instantly resume where you left off across multiple games, improving the overall gaming experience for all gamers on Xbox Series X.
And this is just, again, this is just information as we take in, and there's a lot of information that was talked about with the Xbox Velocity architecture that is like, it's very hard to break down into layman's terms, because the meat of all of this is like, this is going from, a 3-star meal with your current gen hardware to, a 5-star, 6-star meal that you're now doubling what it was you were consuming before, and the quality of what it was you were consuming before, the quantity of what it was you were consuming before. And you now just have to get mentally prepared for the fact that games are going to start to come out in such a way that it's going to be hard not to just be impressed by them at their infancy, because these developers are going to start thinking and designing games in a manner, like Microsoft is saying, is that we've literally never seen before.
We really haven't, and I know we've brought up this specific example so many times, but, this is Bright Memory Infinite. This game was created by just one developer. Rixie asked about Moore's Law and the optimization of existing hardware in the future, and we haven't really seen too much about that, or not a lot of experts have really discussed that in gaming, as we've seen. But looking at this trailer, all of the textures that are loaded in, how the light looks, how the environment looks, how the physics work, most of this is possible because of next-gen architecture, and because the hardware actually makes it easier for a lot of developers to create these games, and you don't need hundreds of people working on all these different textures now. You can have one person create all of this. We've also even seen animators move over to the gaming space, because the animation in gaming is now so robust that animators can create games that are really, more about the story, and that's only, pretty recently possible.
Yeah, and this is just speaking to where the technology is going, what Microsoft is saying, why they're, the Velocity architecture is going to be the advantage for that console, is because it really just feels like they're just like, hey, here's the technology, now do what you will with it. And we're just giving you everything that you need as a developer to create something like what you're seeing here. And to just take that, to a little bit of an extreme, if we look at that game coming out for current gen, the one that takes place where you're like in the bug, it's like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the ones that Obsidian's do. Grounded, yeah, thank you. I want to say Bounded, but then I was like, no,
right.
Grounded. Grounded is a concept where you take kind of like the same idea of how much information can be processed and how much information can you actually experience at one time with these next gen. And it's like, yeah, we can just put you in the backyard of a home where you're going to explore the entire backyard, and it's going to feel like a map 3 times the size of The Witcher, because you're just maneuvering through this whole backyard, and there's bugs everywhere and you've got to survive. Like, I mean, you take these ideas that you're like, oh, wow, how have we never seen a game like this before? And now we're seeing it. Where does that continue to go in that line of thinking of like, oh, I never really thought that this would work, but it makes sense now. This actually does work as a concept. Look at it. It looks fun.
I think the technology has now caught up to a lot of where, creators what they wanted to create so long ago. I mean, it reminds me of the, Mad Max Fury Road, and how I think the director said that this was the movie they've always wanted to make, but the technology wasn't there. They weren't able to create it at the time. And, now with this next gen hardware, a lot of creators, a lot of storytellers, a lot of game developers are able to create those games that they've always really wanted to make and haven't had the opportunity to do so.
Exactly. And that's the other part too, is like, I'm actually curious about games that were being developed early on, maybe let's say this console generation or the previous one, that they just realized they couldn't actually execute the idea because it couldn't be handled. And now that those ideas might come back, or they turn into something else, and that's where we see it go. And I'm just throwing this out there because I know this is a first party title for Microsoft, but Halo once had a vision of being a game that wasn't just a first person shooter. It could be a third person shooter, and it could be an RTS game. Like there was this envision to take Halo to this massive level that I think now could actually happen, where the Halo MMO world could be created and exist and be handled without a problem. And that's something that I'm looking at when we talk about this information, and I'm like, wow, if we finally get to see that day, how amazing will that be?
Right, I know Halo 3 was recently released on Steam as a part of the Master Chief Collection, I think only yesterday or a couple of days ago. And Marone and I are really hoping for a resurgence in Halo. Halo, as a lot of has kind of been forgotten about. There's Halo Infinite coming out, which I don't know what your hype meter, what the chat's hype meter is for that, but I'm just kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to play it. There was a small Halo tournament with, I think the grand prize was like $5,000.
Right.
But at least there was a Halo tournament, and so we're hoping that there's going to be, a new wave of Halo content, and as you said, maybe we could actually, see those ideas realized of having all these different game modes or an RTS version and games like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait. I am reserved on Infinite. Cheers to you, Kai, and your appreciation of the mug. I will say, though, once we get to see Infinite in action and once we get to see the gameplay going on, I think I'll have more of like, oh, am I excited or am I still skeptical? But I think that's actually another thing, too, is that's coming up pretty soon, that they're supposed to be showing off some Halo Infinite gameplay this month. So we might actually finally get to see it in action and have a more firm stance on where we are in our excitement for Halo.
Yeah, I've heard that like the recent Halos were pretty good, nothing like wild, but I think I think in my mind Halo is a lot worse than it actually is. Well, where I'll have friends that still play Halo and they're like, oh yeah, this is still fun, and I'm like, is it? Because I've heard so many bad things about it. So I think it's like still solid, but it's not, it's not the center of attention. It's not really capturing a lot of new gamers. It's kind of more of a thing where if you've played Halo games in the past, I'm sure you like it, but it doesn't really live up to, the god tier that we've put, Halo 1 through 3 through.
Yeah, and jumping from this Xbox Velocity architecture conversation into one that just is epic themselves, now coming out and speaking on behalf of this game to reiterate what you saw was, if we remember, the Senua Saga, which is Hellblade 2, the reveal trailer that we were seeing back on the Xbox, the Game Awards, Epic is reiterating that this was running in real time.
So at the end of last year, we got quite a shock when Phil Spencer walked on the stage of the Game Awards in 2019 and unveiled the Xbox Series X out of nowhere. Alongside it was also the unveiling of the much-anticipated sequel, Senua's Saga Hellblade 2. The game got a stunning reveal trailer that you can see on the screen that was said to be in-engine and in real time, but as is always the case, there was some doubt and skepticism about that. Well, it seems that Epic Games is sticking with it.
So yes, during the Unreal Fest Online event that took place, Epic gave several presentations about their engine, and during a slide about realistic human characters, the model from the trailer was there under quote-unquote unmatched real-time character quality. And the presenter even called it out for you to check out the trailer in question for a look, which is this one right here. So for those who doubted to begin with, it doesn't probably do much or mean much, but there you go. This is Epic coming out and saying what you're looking at right now is in real time. And of course, until we are actually presented with real gameplay and we see it happening in camera, we're still stuck with what anyone's guess is to if this will live up to it or not.
I thought that the graphics in this trailer look so good, but I assumed that it was just kind of like a pre-recorded video or a cutscene, and just, that's loaded in, instead of the actual game handling all these resources and really, utilizing the hardware and software to create this. So if that's what the footage looks like, I'm impressed.
Yeah, that's something I'm stepping away from in this is Epic coming out and saying this is real time, and what we were just watching, though, cut together as like a cinematic. It was the same feeling I got when I saw the trailer for the next Diablo game, and what they were saying for the next Diablo game is everything that you see cinematic wise is actually taking place on the map. We've just moved the camera down to get in there so you can see what takes place, and then we bring the camera out and you go back into your normal gameplay of Diablo. And so that was kind of the moment for me of realizing, like, they might have just been letting the game operate and going in there with like a free cam and capturing the footage that they were capturing and cutting together a trailer. It was just us as the player is always used to a cinematic having been like a pre-rendered, a CGI'd, edited trailer that didn't have actual, foundation in game.
Exactly. We're just so used to having, cutscenes really be a cutscene and not be the in-game camera, not being actually rendered by the device. So I think this needs to be pushed more of, hey, this isn't just a cutscene, like this is the game running, like this is the game working. I think that's a way to really translate or communicate to consumers like how powerful this next gen hardware is, and how really worth the money it is. Because when I always see like PC Master Race memes about like, oh, I'm so glad your PC is better than my Xbox because my Xbox cost $400 and your PC costs $3,000. Like, good for you that you could get like something marginally better for thousands of dollars more. I think that they should really lean into this and have this be part of their marketing strategy, because a lot of these trailers, a lot of these cinematics look great, and they're not just cinematics, it's actually part of the game.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing too, is something you were just saying there, is like if they hit on it more and they show it more, this will then allow just kind of the mindset of your normal gamer that would take this type of, visual and say this is just a pre-rendered cinematic, and start to explain is like, no, we don't have to do that anymore, because these models are so lifelike and they'll handle it on their own. You're going to be pleased with what it is that you're seeing. Yeah, absolutely. That should be something they're hammering home for consumers. The reason it might not be what they're doing right now is because there could be some element of not being completely true yet, but they're close to it being true. And it's not until that it is more consistent that this is what we are seeing is actual in-game footage that they then do that. So I am kind of like, why haven't they used that as like a marketing conversation? Because I think it's important.
Right, me too. And I wonder, how much messaging is going to change as we get closer to, the pre-order stage of these next-gen consoles. I wonder how much consumers are, interested in this. A lot of people are interested in a next-gen console, but some people might not need it. And when I initially heard that it's like, oh, the next gen is like next level, it's crazy, you can't comprehend it, I'm like, yeah, right. That's what like every marketing thing says about every new product. Like, why should I believe this over everything else? And like, now that you and I have talked about this in depth for months now, like I know why it's next level, but for consumers, I wonder if they just think that it's just a marketing gimmick and it's not actually, really bringing anything revolutionary, to the homes of consumers.
Yeah, well, and this actually jumps us into our next story, because this is coming from that Unreal event and that conversation. If we all remember this amazing demo, the Lumen in the land of Nanite, or Nanite in the land of Lumen, however that was. I
think Lumen in the land of Nanite. I think you got it.
Yeah. So they are aiming to have what you are seeing here, which was rendered at 30 frames per second, but they are saying that the next gen hardware will be cranking this out at 60 frames per second on release.
So one of the highlights coming out of the Unreal Engine 5 demo was Epic's new next-gen lighting system, Lumen, which fully supplied dynamic global illumination. While we are still a bit ways away from the full release of Unreal Engine 5, Epic has confirmed that Lumen is currently running at 30 frames per second on next-gen consoles with plans of optimizing it to reach 60 frames per second.
And so this news was confirmed during that Unreal 5 session as a part of the Unreal Fest Online that the company is currently holding to. Nick Penwarden, the vice president of engineering at Epic Games, opened up a bit about the tech behind Lumen, outlining what the team is currently working on in terms of improvements and what they hope to have by the time next-gen consoles launch.
He says that Lumen is an early, ambitious technology and is currently running at 30 frames per second budget on next-gen console. The team is hard at work on optimizing, and we are aiming for a 60 Hz budget on release. Also, while Lumen is great on rougher, reflective objects, we currently don't support mirror reflections on smooth objects. We are also still working on detail tracing to reduce light leaking and achieve better results in architectural settings. Lastly, we are investigating more options for calling, so you can choose where you want to make your trade-offs between quality and performance for your projects.
So he finishes by saying, in summary, Lumen is working today on next-gen consoles. It has a great feature set and gives amazing results for runtime dynamic lighting, as we can see here in this demo, as well as in other examples of the demo. In all, we are incredibly excited to see what content creators can achieve through the power unlocked by Nanite and Lumen working in tandem.
The Lumen in the Land of Nanite demo that you can see ran at approximately 1440p and 30 frames per second, but apparently the PS5 could easily render most of it at 60 frames per second. As we already learned, Nanite is not particularly taxing on hardware. The entire GPU rendering cost of the demo was about 4.5 milliseconds, which is about a quarter the time frame budget at 30 frames per second, or 1/8 at 60 frames per second. The demo also used a rather paltry 768 megabytes of RAM, and in layman's terms, this that you see on screen is only about as taxing as Fortnite to run on a system, is what they're saying.
It's mind-blowing, and despite this, that demo is pushing massive numbers of polygons. A single one of the statues that we see in the demo contains 33 million polygons, and most of it looks like traditional textures being actual 3D geometry made up of tiny pixel-sized polygons, and the statues alone in the scene were 16 billion polygons.
And this final moment where she's flying through the air has about 500,000 super high polygon objects seen during that scene, and Epic says they could quite easily render up to 1 million objects on screen with next-gen hardware.
I mean, just to continue the conversation that we were having with Xbox, you're telling me 60 frames a second on a console at 4K, and that graphic quality that we're looking at there with that Lumen demo. It kind of feels like that moment of when we saw CGI advance in film, in TV, where it just started to become more realistic, that we were like, oh, wait, that was CGI?
Right.
Started to have those moments. I feel like we're having this with gaming.
I think so too, and we talked even yesterday about the next Far Cry game, and how the motion capture and the acting looks more and more realistic. I feel like we could soon see the line blurred of like, oh, that's not actually that actor, like that's not live action. I think we're still a bit ways away from that, but I at least when I see an actor in a game, I don't think, oh, that's a game version of that actor. I think, oh, that's that actor, and that wasn't even pushing the limits of Unreal Engine 5. I'm really looking forward to, new games that utilize this technology and take advantage of it. I think we're still currently in a phase of a lot of new games coming out, as we saw in the Xbox Series X reveal. They're not necessarily graphics heavy or graphics focused. They're, they might rely more on the story, or maybe the developers just chose to not, be so graphics intensive and focus on other aspects, which is fine. But I'm saying that since there's a technology to more easily render, millions of polygons, I think that hopefully developers will see how, relatively easy it is to have very robust graphics.
Yeah, and this is just that echo of when we are taking a look at these demos or these games, once we sit down and we get our hands on and we get to explore those worlds and we get to, actually, control the outcome of what happens here. It's that thing that I liked what Xbox said was about for developers, it's really up to them to take advantage of what they're looking at. And I can only sit and watch a demo like that one there and be like, what world haven't I seen in gaming that I would just love to see? And, my brain just immediately thought of Atlantis. What if there's that game that comes out where you get a full exploration of a place like Atlantis, where the creators create everything that there is from top to bottom, the zero grav aspect. Like, my brain just starts to play with all these ideas and goes, that I can't say that's impossible anymore. You know what I mean? Like, my brain is now like, we could actually see this game. I could unintentionally manifest this game.
I think I'm most excited to see cities in next-gen games. We saw, I think it was Ghostwire Tokyo was a game that was revealed.
Oh my God.
And they said, I should pull up the trailer here, but they said that it was the first time they were able to recreate Tokyo in a game because the hardware in the past, hasn't been robust enough to support it, which I also think is such like a pat on the back of like, Tokyo is too cool for like anything out there to currently support. Like, it's only until now that we're able to really see that, and as you said, it makes me wonder what other worlds we're going to be seeing in the future.
And looking at this, looking at Ghostwire Tokyo and just paying attention to how detailed the cities are and everything that's going to be going on, it makes me think about like Grand Theft Auto 6, right? How impressed were we by Grand Theft Auto 5? What if we now are getting an experience where you're playing a GTA game where every building you can go into, like every place is explorable. There's also an underground, and the sky's the limit with above ground, like just all this stuff
right, with
that
the helicopters
could do. Yeah, like you're saying now, like we could get that full on Second Life experience within these games.
Right, that makes me think of Second Life itself. I think we can see more, metaverses or, GTA Online for GTA 6 being so next level because it's able to, not only look more realistic, but just to be able to handle the load that, showing a whole city in a game or even bigger than that, what it can do with that architecture.
Yeah. Well, our last story, as we continue to wait for more of this amazing next-gen technology, is to continue a little bit with Rockstar, as Red Dead Online players have began dressing up as clowns to protest Rockstar's lack of updates.
I think this is so funny. Everyone's been dressing up as clowns, and I just want to start off to say that this isn't like they're protesting, but it's pretty lighthearted. It's not like a big, massive, like, cancel Rockstar's over party. This is just more of like, we haven't had updates. I'm mad about it. So Red Dead Online players are dressing up as clowns and organizing in-game protests against a lack of major updates from Rockstar, with a large cross-platform event scheduled for July 20th.
So this was first spotted by PC Games, and the Red Dead Online community has been banding together to populate servers in digital clown cosplay. And the lighthearted events are being organized to draw attention to the fact that it's been 7 months since Red Dead Online received a major content update.
The trend seems to stem from the Red Dead fashion community, which I just learned existed, which has been hosting monthly fashion contests. July's theme is the traveling circus, which ran with the mantra, "Since we're all clowns for believing we'll get an update, it's fitting that we dress up as them in game too."
So from there, the community began filling servers with clowns and documenting their antics. In an interview with Polygon, Magnar, an admin from Red Dead Online Discord group, explained that rather than let it turn negative or nasty, which in-game communities can often do, I thought I'd turn our protests into something a bit more fun and even wholesome in a way.
The meetups have further mobilized the Red Dead Online community, which plans to hold that major cross-platform clown event next Monday, July 20th. A tweet from the Red Dead Online community Twitter account says, "I'll share details over the weekend, but I'd suggest planning a nice circus or clown-themed outfit in the meantime." You can get involved by joining that Discord community and check out the Red Dead fashion community within.
And then, of course, in other Red Dead Redemption 2 news, you got to check out this week's special Bounty Hunter rewards and bonuses for Red Dead Online players, available to all players, regardless of their chosen costume.
I love this, and this reminds me of like the Alien War in GTA, which wasn't a protest, but it was just the same idea of just like online communities like mobilizing because they can oftentimes. I wonder what kind of updates people want from Red Dead Online, how long this game is going to be supported. It seems like there are some, in-game events happening, but clearly not enough for a lot of the community to be happy about. If anyone plays Red Dead Online, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well of if you think Rockstar has been really supporting this game or if they're just kind of letting it exist at this point.
Yeah, I think there is enough recognition there that Rockstar is super focused on GTA Online, and Red Dead Online, for whatever reason, they just don't have the resources going into it. Maybe they're focused on the next the next game of Grand Theft Auto 6 or whatever, but there is a large community that got that game hoping there would be this active online experience like you have with GTA Online. And it's odd that Rockstar kind of like took this very like lean back, not so interest approach with their community. And I love how the community is like, cool, if you think, basically you must think that we're clowns, so we'll dress like them.
So we'll dress like them. I wonder if Rockstar is starting to bite off a little more than it can chew because it's still supporting GTA Online. There's Red Dead Online, and they're slowly working on the next GTA installment. I wonder if the company is growing as well with all the games that they've had to support, or if they are just kind of taking a pause from Red Dead Online, to really support GTA. I mean, GTA has been at the top of game charts for years now. That game has been out since 2013, and it's still one of the best-selling games of the year. So I wonder if the future of Rockstar means the company is going to be growing more, if they really are just going to be picking and choosing, what games are going to be focusing on.
Yeah, and that this is just one of those where it's like, I don't know necessarily how Rockstar is like, how active they are within their own community. I think it is very important when developers allow themselves to have, their consumers some form of access to them, whatever it may be, through Twitter or through an AMA on Reddit or however you want to address it. But like to just be 7 months without a major update, and as someone who's like, if you're playing it and you're spending money on it and you're basically going, hey, I spent money on this last update, I'm going to continue to do the in-game transactions and I'm waiting for this next update, it would make sense that you would be like 7 months later going, what am I putting my money into? Am I throwing it away? Like, where is this actually going now?
Right. What am I actually, getting from this content? A lot of chat says they have their eyes on GTA. Chat does, maybe the developers do as well. 7 months without an update is, quite a long time. I think that recently a lot of gamers are more hungry for updates because, things like Fortnite are constantly updated, and I think that adds pressure to other games to, always add new content all the time. But I think there is a healthy balance between that, but 7 months is quite a stretch to go. Yeah,
and for those of you who do play it, if you dress up like a clown, send us a photo. Like, let us tweet at us or find us in the Discord or whatever to show us, because I want to see people who are like, here's my clown, but here's my version of the clown.
Here's my Red Dead clown. I wanted
to
say that I give props to the Red Dead Online community for being very lighthearted about this. Like, this isn't a story about like, oh, like Red Dead Online is trash, they don't care about us, like, a garbage company, which I often see on Twitter. A lot of people are so quick to, hate on games because of that. Instead, they've taken more of a fun approach of like, I just want to enjoy this video game. like, am I the clown because I thought I'd get new content, you know, versus being, you know, like the angry online, like Twitter fingers gamer that a lot of gamers are unfortunately known for.
Yep. So get out there, put on your clown makeup, give your statement of wanting more content for the game that you've paid for and are continuing to pay for, and all the while have fun and enjoy the fashion shows and everything that everybody's trying to do, which is something I like what you just said there, and I want to, you know, echo behind that is good on you, Red Dead Online community, for not taking the salty negative approach that you could have taken in this regard. Keep it up. Maybe some content will start to release and Rockstar will have to pay attention to you because you are not clowns.
You are not clowns. I like that they are encouraging the developers rather than just, you know, blaming things on them. Is a nice light note to end on for our news day.
It is, but tune in tomorrow, as tomorrow we will actually have some footage of the Gears of War 5 running on the Xbox Series X, and they're going to be showing that off tomorrow, July 16th, and also Thursday is our news segment where we will do a throwback to On This Day in Gaming. So make sure to tune in and check out our Throwback Thursday news breakdown of On This Day in Gaming. But this does bring us to the end of the Daily Gaming News Hour.
Thank you so much for joining us on our July 15th day of news. You can always check out the VOD afterwards on Twitch. Once this stream ends, we'll also be posting this on YouTube. If you're watching a VOD, we are live every weekday from 1 to 2 p.m. PST.
So make sure to tune in and check us out. Continue to hit that follow, that like, that subscribe. Continue to become a part of the DGN fam and help us to grow. But for the Daily Gaming News Hour, I am Marrone.
I am Kaisa. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.